Hey everybody, welcome back to Cavemansec Security. This is Robbie, and today we're going to go over another video. This time we're going to go through authorization testing. So let's get into it. So just to rehash information from the authentication. So when we look at this, we want to say in authentication, who are you? Authorization, what are you allowed to do? So am I allowed to look at this? Am I allowed to be in here? Stuff like this, okay? So why authorization matters? So authentication gets you inside the door, but authorization controls what happens next. So this is true. So kind of same thing, right? So maybe you're able to go into a store, but are you allowed to purchase something? Or are you allowed to take something? This type of stuff is important to know. All right, so there's two types of authorization failures. One is horizontal, which means you're getting access to another user's data. And then vertical, which is accessing higher privilege functionality, which could be like admin privileges, okay? So it's kind of like network pen testing when we're trying to do like lateral or horizontal movement. But in this case, we're just trying to jump from one user to next or go from user to admin, right? So pretty simple ideas, but pretty straightforward. All right, so here's kind of just a really watered down version of horizontal authorization. So we have our get request, which is API orders 123. So this will return Bob. So now if I change it to get orders 1234 and I get a 200 OK, maybe I will get Alice's order. So this is quite important. So always check this and see what you can look at. This is really important. So you never know what you might find. Vertical authorization. So we see here we have our get API admin user. So we see that the admin functionality is in here, and we're trying to look at all the users. And if this works, we get a 200 OK. That means we can receive admin data. So sometimes when developers are developing their endpoints, they don't always think about the users accessing API endpoints. So they just kind of leave out the security, which is dangerous. So I think a lot of times we can check this as a quick win and see what we can find. And I think in general, you can do this with even without the admin functionality. You can just do like Ebola or BFLA or IDOR. And, 9 times out of 10, you'll probably get something because, again, they say it's not a common vulnerability, but it is a common vulnerability. That's why it's so neo-WASP. So always test this and make sure that you can always access it. Okay, so here's some common authorization targets. So look for profiles, orders, invoices, vehicles if you're looking at a vehicles app, messages, reports, admin endpoints, settings. So all these things have very specific purposes, but a lot of times when developers are messing with them, usually they kind of keep them simple, like 1, 2, 3, whatever. So always kind of play with this. See what it is you can change. Even for me, I seen like websites where I see like a interesting like endpoint like 1 or 2 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and part of me wants to go, I wonder if I can change that. I don't try to because maybe it could be a little dangerous, but and that's the first thing I think about when I see something like this, even just in a URL. So give it a try. All right, so here's kind of a workflow that I think would be really useful for beginners and maybe even intermediate users. So you want to log in as user A, which is yourself. Don't try to log in another user yet. Then capture the request. See what is the mechanism. How is the workflow of that authentication request, right? Then try to modify the identifier. So if you see that you're user 1, change it to user 2. See what happens. See what data you can find. And a lot of times when you're logging into a website, you'll kind of end up seeing like these interesting authorizations like who am I or whatever. And it's just kind of a verification checker. So if you can change that from like, whatever your identifier number is to another identifier number and it works, then, you found people's data and that's very scary. Okay. And again, just observe the response. What is it doing? What is the data at the end of the result? Stuff like this. And if you can do that, then you can obviously take that identifier and maybe do something like an intruder attack or something like this through like Kaido or Burp Suite and try to enumerate identifiers. And if you can, then you could probably find like a whole list of people. I've done it. I've seen it before. So it's definitely possible. So just think about that. All right, so again, we're going to kind of go back over WASP a little bit. So we're going to go through BOLA. So remember, this is broken object levelized authorization. So the question you should ask yourself is, can I access an object that belongs to someone else? So again, we go get vehicle 123. Okay, if I get that, then I will try get vehicle 1234 or 124. If it works and I get access, boom, I just had a BOLA. Quick win, right? BFLA. So this is for broken function level authorization. So can I perform a function that I shouldn't? So this is the fun part, can I delete a user? Can I add a user? Can I remove something? Can I take something away? So we have our example here, get admin user. So this one is maybe being able to view all the users in the web application. So this is a normal user functionality. So we're not actually logged in as a user, but we're using our own auth token, our own login. So if we can use this get request and it works, then we have admin functionality, which is super dangerous. So, be mindful of that. Again, developers, I think that people are the stupidest people in the world, so they don't think about what normal users are capable of. So they're always going to leave their endpoints insecure. They're always going to do dumb stuff. So never be afraid of trying something because, 9 times out of 10, it could work. All right. So we'll move on from this a little bit. No activity today. We're going to keep it simple because I have a little bit of a cold. So secure authorization. So here, we want to verify ownership. We want to verify roles. We want to look at permissions, every request. It doesn't matter what it is. Look at every request. Take the time to enumerate, kind of go back to our asset inventory and our business logic and see what the website's doing. The more we observe it, the more we look at things, the better, okay? So here's a good example of a secure authorization. If vehicle.owner, so we're combining two things, vehicle and the owner ID. Okay, so owner ID is not. So that exclamation point with the equals is not. So that's kind of an important factor here. Current user.id. So now what we're doing is we're having the vehicle plus the owner ID, and we're checking against the current user and the ID. If they do not match, we should return a 403, which is an error. This is what we want. This is how we kind of prevent some of these BOLAs, BFLAs, stuff like this. So I think this is very useful, and I think this is good to know when you're going through like code review. Okay, so again, let's just kind of look at some HTTP status codes. So remember, when we're looking at BOLAs, BFLAs, IDORs, if we get a 403, that's a good thing. We don't really want users to look at other people's information, right? So this is great. If we see a 200 OK, that's incorrect because we could probably see some sensitive data. More likely, because if you're doing like a BOLA or BFLA, usually it has like invoice information, credit card information, PII, stuff like this. So no matter what, you're always going to run into sensitive data here. Okay. Oops. All right. So here's just my authorization checklist. I think this is really useful and something to think about. So find your identifiers, kind of find if there's like a number, username, whatever. Change the identifier. Go check it out. See, can I go from 123 to 1234, or 124, 125, whatever. Test another user. If you know another user's information, try to access it. If they say, get user profile Robbie, and we know another one is named Bobby, we can say get user Bobby, and if it works, then boom, we're able to access information. Or, we can log in or whatever. Test admin endpoints, kind of enumerate for them, see what's there, and test the functionality. Can I add a user? Can I delete a user? Can I view information? You don't need an auth token right away. Check it without the authorization token. And if you can access it, great. And then if not, then yes, go and try to do like some JWT forging, some cookie forging, but that's beyond the scope of this video. But, kind of think about the next steps in that situation. Test hidden functionality. You know what? A lot of times when you're looking at endpoints, like through source code, sometimes you will find hidden functionality you may not have seen elsewhere. So that's why we go through asset inventory. Go through the whole website, go through the whole application, see what's there, see what you may not have seen on the front end, and see what's there. And then check the code review, see if there's anything hidden in there. I've seen coding challenges or web application challenges where if you look through the JavaScript source code, there's actually like an endpoint that I was able to use and change information, but you don't see it when you're running it through Kaido or Burp Suite. So this is why it's really important to feel comfortable with code, feel really comfortable with dev tools, because the more you start to observe the web application, the more proficient and more comfortable you're going to get. And then finally, observe the HTTP responses. You want to see what kind of information you get. Okay. So here's my key takeaways. So authorization answers, what are you up to? What are you allowed to do? Right. So always test your objects. Always test your functions. Check the roles. Check the ownership. There's been times where I've been able to change my role from a user to admin, or whatever, or from a 1 to a 2, and things kind of work out. They really do. So you may think, well, that's stupid, that's too easy. No, it's not, because as a developer, because I am a full stack developer now, um, I don't always think about security, even though I should, but I don't, because I'm always like, hey, I need to get this done. I need to get this functionality working. But, I've been trying to encourage people to slow down, take the time to go through that secure functionality, so then you're not running into problems later, right? So again, if I'm running into that as a developer, that people who are much better than I am are probably running into the same issue. Okay, so guys, let's go ahead and run through a demo. So we're going to run through crappy API, and we're going to kind of see if we can find some other people's information. So if you're ready, let's get started. All right, everybody. So here we are at the crappy API. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of see if we can find some other people's information. So one thing we should do is we should try to invoke some information. So what we're going to do is we're going to contact our mechanic, kind of go through here, kind of put in some information. We're gonna call Jamie this time, or James. What do you want to call him? Doesn't work. Fix now. Ooga ooga. Okay. Let's send a request. So here, what we can do is we can kind of say, okay, hey, can I see any information from this request? So let's see here what we got. So we can kind of see nothing really too exciting. Verify authorization, dashboard, workshop mechanic. Okay, so let me see here. Nothing too serious, right? But we do see something interesting here in like our ID or report 14. So we also see this report link. This is localhost 888 workshop mechanic report 14. Okay, so this is really important. So that's why I tell you to look at the requests, also the request and response, because even if you don't see anything telling in the request, you can find something telling in the response. So let's go ahead and take this for a minute. And we know that my request is 14. So what we can do is we can maybe kind of go through and we can try to access this endpoint, right? So that's all we're going to do, try to access the endpoint. So we're going to try something like 13. Okay, so let's see what we got. So we got a negative on that, but we can kind of throw this into like Kaido and see if we can find any information. So let's try that. So we have a 13. So let's see if we can change it. So we're going to actually copy this. Oops, I don't need that. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to automate, because automate's going to help us to find any more information. So let's kind of go through that here. So we're going to add this. We're going to make a simple number list. Then we're going to go through like 1 through 20. Very simple. So what we want to look for is see if there's any requests that get accepted, right? But it's interesting. We see that this is all 401s. Why? So if you go back, you see that we don't have an authorization token. That's very important. So when we think about authorization, authentication, stuff like this, it's important to know. So let's kind of go back and see if we can find like our authorization key. We can. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our auth key. We're going to copy this. Go back to automate. We're going to delete all of this. So here we are. So let's kind of go through this. I'm going to delete some of this other stuff because I don't need it. So let's kind of go ahead and add that. We can add that anywhere, really. It doesn't matter. So we can put it like maybe after upgrade, and we can have the auth token. So now 1 through 20, let's see what we find. If it works. Sometimes, when I run these tests, sometimes they come out kind of funny. Okay, so this is really important. So we just see like a lot of 200s. Now, we need to make sure that these are actually real 200s. So let's start off with 1, and let's see what information we get. So we see something like my car MG motor. Okay. So this is, and we see another email. So we see pogaexample.com. Okay. So that's real username, real information. Test@example.com. Okay. Yep. So my car is motor MG. Okay. So we kind of see that there is some information. James@example.com. Okay. John@example.com. Poga. Okay. So we see that, yes, we can look at other people's requests, other people's information. But the most important thing is we need like an authorization token. So this kind of piggybacks off of last class. So if you're trying to go through information, but you need some sort of authentication code or bearer key or something, you need to add that because this specific endpoint asks for an authentication token. And so we sat there and say, well, why isn't my automation not working? What's going on? But that's a really great use case. So now, we went back, used our authorization token, and we were able to find good information, which is important, right? So we see that this is exactly what we need because now we know, okay, we know that this is going to help us, this is going to work, and now we can access other people's information. Okay, so guys, that was kind of a really rough example. I do apologize, I have kind of a cold today, but hopefully you kind of saw the methodology between authorization and authentication, right? So, we needed an auth token to be able to access people's information, but we didn't need like a specific authentication token. So we didn't need admin, we didn't need another users, we just needed our own. So that was really telling. And then we also could see that we couldn't access other people's information without an authentication token. So that kind of tells you how loose development can be sometimes. And I hope that's a good lesson. Okay, so guys, good luck on your bug bounty journey, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.